brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
Well, according to my phone, it is 5 o'clock. So to respect everybody's time, I think I will call the meeting to order. Thank you so much for everybody making the effort to join us tonight. Hope you've had a good month since the last time we all got together to talk. Just a couple things. This meeting is being broadcast live by Valley Media Works on Charter Channel 994, WRFP-LP 101.9 FM, and online at valiamediaworks.org. Scott, is that all right?
Yes, that's correct. We are
okay, good. Good. Okay. So we will work on our agenda, relatively informal, but to also be aware that we're going to be dealing with these issues and hopefully in a orderly, and we need to do it in a business-like fashion. So to that point, we'll make sure our comments are discussing the issues that are at hand, and we'll make sure we're being prudent and efficient to respect everybody's time. And we also want to make sure we have enough time to review all the information we need to with equal diligence. So make sure anybody, if you've got your phones with you, to either put them on silent or turn them off. Because of the format, I'd encourage you, if you do want to talk about something, to introduce yourself first, and for those that are joining that are not members of the commission, to also list out your address. So that's all I had just to kind of start the meeting off, and from there we will go on to roll call. So in no particular order, we'll start with Judy Mosley.
Here.
Cody Flipchak. Didn't see him come on. And if I mispronounce your last name, or your first name for that matter, please correct me, and my apologies in advance. Austin Gulbranson.
Here.
Natasha Gomez. Here. Carrie Poser.
Here.
Jennifer Chappett.
Here.
Scott Rogers.
Here.
Karen Betzig-Lundberg.
Here.
Beth Kroll here. Mai Zhang. And Tina Tyson. And it does appear that we have a quorum. So we can move on to agenda item number 3, which is reading and approval of meeting minutes of October 14th, 2020. These were included in your agenda packet. Does anybody have any additions, changes, or corrections to the meeting minutes? Hearing none, we would need a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
This is Carrie Poser. I can make that motion.
Carrie Poser has moved to approve the minutes. Second?
Karen Betzig-Lundberg seconds.
Karen Betzig-Lundberg with a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll move on to item number 4. Open public comment period for items that do not appear on this agenda, noted as public hearings or items for public discussion. And do we have anybody from the public that would wish to speak tonight? Anybody from the public that would wish to speak tonight? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to agenda item number 5. Public discussions, part A. We'll review the background information. There's a bunch of information that's attached, but I think at this time I'll pass it over to Scott, and he can take it from here.
All right, taking the chair role. Before you this evening or afternoon are some just background information, background materials that were provided in your agenda packet, either for these 2020 to 2024 consolidated plan. I do see Mr. Keith Jonathan, Housing Authority Director, is on the line if there are any questions related to that item in particular. But again, that's some good background material as you move forward with deliberating, work plan for next year, reviewing one of the other items coming up, Comprehensive Plan Chapter 10, and again, just other policy recommendations that may come from the commission. So just wanted to provide that and acknowledge that, and thank Mr. Jonathan and his staff for providing that. Also provided was the text update to the multifamily design manual that was adopted end of last year, first of this year. And again, due to staff capacity and the pandemic, that was a project that was set aside to do the actual redrafting of and reformatting of the current manual. So we still have that. Those materials, if they're not on the website, I believe they should be. And again, it's more of a text kind of addendum or appendix as it stands now. So the full multifamily design manual is from 2006 with the addendum from 2019. And again, an updated version will be forthcoming here hopefully in the next several months. And then the final item is the Comprehensive Plan Chapter 10 housing plan that was provided to you last meeting. And just want to see if there's any initial feedback or comments on that. Kind of like the setup or background for that is the Plan Commission is going through their 5-year kind of midterm review of the entire comprehensive plan. And under the direction of the Plan Commission, they ask staff to essentially take relevant chapters and sections of the comprehensive plan and bring it before various boards and commissions, for example, yourself, and the related chapter is the housing plan, which is chapter 10. So really the end goal is to essentially establish the priorities and benchmarks and projects for the next 5 years before we do another full revision and rewrite of the entire comprehensive plan. So with that goal in mind, we're not necessarily looking at, we can certainly clean up, grammatical errors or typos and such, that's certainly fine. But looking at what should, the Housing Opportunities Commission, what should the Planning Commission, what should the city as a whole be doing in these different chapters with these different topics for the next 5 years. So that's essentially what we're looking to get feedback on moving forward. So with that, Chair Kroll, I'll turn it back to you to see if there's any discussion or comments or input at this point on that item.
Sure. Thank you, Scott. So the idea for tonight is if anybody has anything that they wish to discuss as a group as it relates to the Chapter 10 of the Housing Plan of the Comprehensive Plan, we'd have that discussion tonight. Bring that forward, of course, with staff present, so then staff can then take our thoughts into consideration for the next meeting to bring it back for some kind of a recommendation based on the discussion we have. We can have this discussion tonight as a group. You could choose to review the documentation, have a conversation with staff directly. So it's not necessary that we have a group discussion here, but if there are things that any commission member would like to discuss tonight, as it relates to the housing plan for the comp plan, this would be the time to do it. So if you do have anything you'd like for us to discuss, let's get at it.
This is Karen Betzig-Lundberg. I have a few questions so that I can better understand the consolidated plan. And I don't know if that's something I could just send this to staff and ask these questions, but a few things to make sure I understand everything, whether this is the right forum or not.
Thank you, Karen. I would, unless Scott, you feel differently, it may be good for the entire group to listen to what Karen has to say.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Kroll. Again, Mr. Jonathan is on the line. If you'd like to unmute him as an attendee, he may be able to answer some of the questions.
Sure.
And I'll turn it over to him and to Commissioner Betzig-Lundberg for comments.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, who did you say it was, Scott?
Keith Jonathan?
Oh, okay.
My questions at this point, I started with questions on the consolidated plan, and is that what you'd like me to ask right now? Mr. Johnson is with
Yes.
or with the housing?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, Chair Kroll and Commissioner Betzig-Lundberg. Mr. Jonathan is the Executive Director for the Housing Authority. So if there's some just general kind of questions about the consolidated plan that Chair Kroll, I'll defer to you, but I believe that is cogent for tonight, just in case everybody has not yet reviewed it in depth. It is quite a thick and deep tome. So I'm sure, if there's some clarifying questions, that's certainly appropriate.
Okay. Well, I'll fire away then and just tell me to stop at any point if you need to. The first question I had, and it was on pages 26, 27, and 28, what is the other category for number of households? What does other entail?
I'm looking for that page right now.
This would be in the cost burden?
Right, greater than 50%. I see that one. It says other. Okay, and 30%. I am not certain at this point, but I can get that information for you for next meeting or send an email out.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My next question. I'm getting feedback. I don't know about the rest of you. I hope not. My next question is, of the 303 dwelling units owned by the city, 145 are for elderly and aging. What portion of units are accessible for persons with disabilities? This is well written in much of the plan, but I was just wondering what it mentions. A portion are reserved for these populations. Wondering if you know what portion that would be.
The Housing Authority owns and operates Owen Ruff Memorial Apartments and Park Tower Apartments. They are for senior/handicapped populations. Owen Ruff has 2 units that are handicapped accessible, and Park Tower Apartments, I believe, has 8 units that are handicapped accessible as well.
Thank you. Then along with that same question was how much funding for development of rehabilitation of housing stock that has universal accessibility features and the capability to be adapted? Is there a particular funding for development or rehabilitation of current housing stock for that purpose?
If you're talking about the funding that is allocated through the Community Development Block Grant Program, I don't know it off the top of my head, and I'll have to find it in the report.
Sure.
But 100% can be for any type of rehabilitation, whether it's to make something accessible for an applicant or basically whatever they want. We don't have a minimum or maximum in that regard. we go based on the need of the applicants that apply. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
On page 80, I'm just confused, and it's undoubtedly me, so you can walk me through it. It's for entitlement consortia grantees, specify the activities that the jurisdiction plans to undertake during the next year. And that's on page 80, to address housing and supportive services needs with respect to persons who are not homeless but have other special needs. When I was reading this report, obviously there was homeless, and perhaps I know that there's homeless with special needs as well. And then there was a category designated as persons who are not homeless but have other special needs. But on that page then, where I got confused was, it talked about sprint type activities, which I think I understood. But it talked about persons experiencing homelessness and chronically homeless individuals. So with respect to persons who are not homeless but have other special needs, I'm confused.
Let me just quick go through that. I think the basis for the response to this question is what we intend to do to identify and assist those individuals or families that have needs, whether they're homeless, whether they need some type of accommodation or whatever in that program. We don't really know what we'll encounter and what people will come up with, but that's a goal that we strive to work on should the situation arise.
Thank you. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And let's see, I'm almost done, unless you want to throw me off at any point. On page 81, the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice indicates that there's no barriers or negative effects of public policies on accessible housing. I'm wondering about that, whether there's a shortage of accessible housing, which would be a barrier. I know in the 2012 Fair Housing Analysis of Impediments, it was listed as the second most critical goal or critical area. But on page 54, the consolidated plan lists it as extreme special needs assessment and indicates that needs are not met. So would that be a barrier or not? I'm simply asking so that I can be clear in understanding the intent. Or words are one thing, and how they go together content-wise are quite another.
Again, let me go through this real quick. As you can see, this is an extensive document. I've been through it several times, but by no means do I remember what's on every page. So just give me a second. Okay, I see what you're talking about. The last paragraph per the 2018 analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. It just means that there were none identified. Again, we have a consultant, we work with a consultant to prepare not only the consolidated plan, but also the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. and they do a lot of research to come up with the conclusions that they put into the report. So what this report is saying, because they did not create the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice, they are referring to another document that somebody else did. So they're just reiterating that there are no identified public policies that hinder affordable housing and residential development. If there are challenges to that statement, I can go back and research it and answer any more specific questions you might have on it, if that works for you.
Oh, I'm not challenging, I hope.
No, well, that's why I'm here. If you've got a challenge, I am here to answer the question, and if I can't answer the question, then I am obligated to find out an answer for you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The only other part of this, with that question, had to do with the design standards, core neighborhoods, and maybe that's, I don't know if that's that narrative document, and I do have a question about that, how to interpret something on there. Other than that, let's see, which I don't know, is that a question for you, or is that a question for someone else?
Is that in the comprehensive plan you're speaking about?
That is not.
Is that in the consolidated plan? And if so,
No.
what page?
No, that is not.
Okay.
That's in the design standards core neighborhoods. I think it's multifamily design manual. I have a question about that also relates to this, but so I don't know.
I think that would be a Scott Allen question.
Okay.
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, my question is, in multifamily design manual, the building design states that elevation of first floor foundation at a height similar to neighboring residences.
Yes.
I'm wondering, like a 3-step entry versus a 0-step entry, the foundation would be at different heights. Would this allow, does this design manual allow a 0-step entry? The height of the foundation would be different than neighboring residences.
Yes, no, it's a very good question. When talking about universal design and other accessibility expectations, that's certainly something that would be taken into account. The intent behind this is to try to, incorporate enough of the front entry and facade design elements of the historic neighborhood, particularly in this case, that would be incorporated into a new construction. So again, if that is, for example, one of the only elements that's not adhered to, that would be something that Plan Commission and others would take into account. So the idea is to, I would say, call it a menu, but it's almost as if it is more of a menu approach, where the idea is to take advantage of as many of those design elements as possible, with the understanding that there will be some expectations and preferences for some more, modern allowances, like an accessible entrance and other elements like that. So it does not exclude that. It just would, again, look at preference for certain design and facade treatments, and that's one of those elements, but not exclusively required.
I think you're still muted, Karen.
Okay, can you hear me now? I put it up through the camera. I don't know, headsets don't always work either. So thank you very much. I was thinking that perhaps this had more to do with split entry and more modern homes. That wouldn't fit in, but I wanted to make sure that for universal design purposes and for people with disabilities that zero entry wouldn't necessarily be precluded, and you've answered that question very well. Thank you. I have one more question, just one more. You haven't thrown me off yet. My last question, and this is on page 120 of the consolidated plan. And I want to know, I guess I don't know what this is. What are healthcare funded housing models are experimental models? I'm real interested in that for obvious reasons.
Yes, I think that would be a question for Keith.
What was that, Scott?
I think it's a question for you. Was it page 120? Is that right?
Yes, I think that's for me. There are communities that the healthcare systems have worked to provide certain types of housing. I'm familiar with one in Columbus, Ohio. I was made aware of it a couple of years ago through the Invest Health initiative. I don't have any of that data with me right now. If you'd like some more data on any of that, I can provide that.
I was just curious as to what was as far as getting more funding from care systems or other agencies.
I know the hospital systems have worked on like some workforce housing initiatives. They've done things like that. If you're talking about healthcare funded in terms of providing housing for those that need accessible housing, that I'm not familiar with. But I can provide or get some information for you on other healthcare provided or healthcare funded housing models.
Thank you very much. It looks like something that's being explored to see if there's other options for us, for locally, I presume.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. That's the end of my questions.
All right, thank you so much for those questions, Karen and Keith, for joining us and providing us the information. Thank you very much. I'll make note that we have two more commission members that have joined us. We have Tina Tyson, who has joined us virtually, and Mai Zhang has also joined us. We are on agenda item 5, and we just got done with section A, or we're still in the midst of section A. So what we were to bring everybody else up to speed, if anybody has any discussion for the Chapter 10 housing plan of the comprehensive plan, this would be the time to have that discussion. And then at the next meeting, we would look for a potential recommendation from staff. So for those that have just joined us, if you do have something of Chapter 10 of the housing plan that you wish to discuss as a group tonight, this is the time to do it. You can also reach out to staff directly if there are things that you just want to address with staff. So Karen has kicked us off here with her questions. Does anybody else have anything that they would wish to discuss as a group tonight? As related to that section.
Chair Kroll, this is Judy. I have a question.
This is Carrie. Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. How about we'll have Carrie go first?
Okay. Thank you. I have a couple of comments / questions for Keith as well in regards to the consolidated plan. If he's still there.
Oh, yes, I'm here.
So Keith, I was going to email you, but I decided I'm going to say it out loud anyways. Throughout a lot of the plan, pages, for example, 109 through 111, you refer to the Dairyland COC. Can I make a request that you change that to Local Homeless Coalition to be more accurate to represent the difference?
Yes, I noticed that the consultant had referred to it as the COC, and I realized, and I read the draft over several times, but I did not make that correction. But I do understand that we are the local coalition and not the COC, because the COC is you.
I totally understand, and I appreciate that. I just, as I'm going through it, I could see the concern.
I can see you cringing right now.
The only other question I had was on page 110, when you have to list out the different services specifically targeted to people that are homeless. You have your homeless prevention, you have street outreach, you have supportive services, and then you have an other and a checkbox, and then nothing on the left side. I'm just curious if that was a X typo or if missing the word on the left side is the typo.
Which page is that? I'm sorry, Carrie.
No, you're fine. 110.
Okay. Scrolling up, but I don't want to miss it. Okay, there we go. Oh yeah, let's find that out for you. I can bring that information back next month for certain.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you, Carrie. And Judy, did I hear you that you had some questions?
Yes, one in particular for Mr. Jonathan. There's a lot of data in the in this document, and it repeatedly in the demographics refers to HAMFI, which is the HUD area, median family income. And I wonder what that HUD area is. Is that just the city of Eau Claire, or does it include surrounding areas? What is the HUD area?
I'm not exactly sure, but with regard to this report, I'm sure it talks about the MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area, which is the city of Eau Claire County, and just the regional area. There are some areas where it talks about the area, meaning that it would be specific to Eau Claire. I can get a hold of my consultant, and I can ask him to specify where throughout the documents he's specifically talking about the city of Eau Claire and what would be the MSA.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is Natasha Gomez. I just had one really quick question. The page I'm looking at on the consolidated plan is 37. I've used it a couple times, but when talking about housing problems, I was just curious for the first two housing problems, the lack of complete kitchen facilities, lack of complete plumbing facilities. Just kind of wrap my mind around like what the scope of that issue is and how we're seeing that, play out. What are some real life examples of where we're seeing that and how we're seeing it?
I think I'll turn that over to Mr. Jonathan as well.
That was a part of the research done by the consultant. So I personally don't have any specifics to address. but I can get that information and provide it next month.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Any commission members have anything else we'd like to discuss tonight? Otherwise, again, you're encouraged to reach out to staff with any questions or comments.
I do have one other question, Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Judy.
Thank you. I wonder, you know, as part of this data, and this is more a question, I think, on the comprehensive plan, do we have data on how many rental units we have in the city in different price categories? Do we have access to that data?
That's a great question. I don't know if Mr. Jonathan has that answer or anybody else on the commission. I do not have that readily available, but Mr. Jonathan may.
I don't have that data either.
Great question, though. And certainly one of the items we need to consider when we look at a housing inventory moving forward.
I know that the university, specifically the Student Senate, is working on some housing lists for the 3rd Ward and the Randall Park neighborhoods where the students live, but that's not a complete Eau Claire housing inventory.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or thoughts for discussion? Okay, hearing none, then we can move on to B, the Affordable Housing Fund. This is also information that was provided as a part of your meeting agenda packet tonight. It came after all of the previous information, and again, I will turn it over to staff.
All right, thank you very much, Chair Kroll. Again, this item before you this evening is related to Affordable Housing Fund. Again, I apologize for the omission of some of the key data in terms of the capital improvements plan. That item was then emailed out to everybody yesterday, so hopefully everybody had a chance to see that. It was just, again, an excerpt from the capital improvements plan. Materials you can grab from the budget pages on the city website if you'd like to look at more of that in context. In that, it does talk about this investments in affordable housing. Again, that's for the current year capital improvements plan, or CIP. Again, the goal of that is to create and expand opportunities to assist with affordable housing, which is a very broad goal and concept, to be sure, but certainly a noble one that this commission now is tasked with assisting with. Appropriated funds included, as noted there, there's showing $700,000 for 2020. That includes $200,000, towards land acquisition for a single-family housing development to the east of Jeffers Road at kind of the unconstructed but platted Andy Lane. And $500,000 has been specified for what has been labeled, again, kind of a working term, Affordable Housing Fund. Now, the kind of important note with that is it's currently a one-time allocation, expressly applied to capital uses. So that can be, new construction, even some adaptive reuse, but not necessarily intended for other soft costs, so to speak. Program costs like we use with CDBG and home funds, where you can use it for staffing and things of that sort. Now, earlier this year, before the pandemic hit, we were doing a lot of research. Staff was working on that. Mr. Jonathan was involved with that as well. looking at other funds in the state and also nationally, looking at different programs and how they utilize affordable housing funds for projects like permanent supportive housing, first-time home ownership, mixed income housing developments, transitional housing, revolving loan programs, and the like. More specifically, staff also explored a reuse of a local motel for transitional housing with some supportive programming. We were working on that even when the pandemic hit, and we were working with a number of parties related to that. However, late this summer, that potential project unfortunately was no longer viable, due in part to other parties kind of shifting priorities as a result of the pandemic. So with that, we then looked at launching the commission, and here we are with your second meeting. And staff is now looking to engage you in the discussion and hopefully provide a eventual recommendation to City Council. Again, tonight is really looking at kind of that discussion and conversation on this, and hopefully starting to frame up some of these options that are presented in this memorandum. And then hopefully staff can come back, perhaps even as early as next meeting, with kind of a final recommendation for your consideration. So with that, we've tried to break it down in kind of easy to digest bites here, with kind of two different types of categories. One being looking at these affordable housing fund monies for new construction, and a second category being those for existing housing. So with that, we'll look first at the new construction, two different ideas or options for consideration. One would be more of a competitive award where we kind of build a program and develop some award criteria. That was something that staff actually was finding in a lot of its research earlier this year. A second option under that would be we're calling it kind of leveraging the low-income housing tax credits. So essentially piggybacking on those successful projects with this funding. With the competitive award concept, I do have to give full credit or blame, depending on your thoughts, to our city attorney for the acronym CAN DO. So hopefully you saw that, perhaps had a little chuckle at least about that. But in local government, we love acronyms, so that was his brainchild there. But again, with the competitive award, that would be something where we could look at some different award criteria. The concern is that with $500,000, it sounds like quite a bit, but again, if it's a competitive program, where you have different groups competing for that, it could quickly become dwindled and not really assist too many affordable units being created in the end. The other thing with this too is that it would require ongoing staff time to monitor compliance with those affordability restrictions, and again, that could be extended period of time in terms of multiple years even. The second option, as noted, maybe a bit easier to absorb, because you can simply look at those who are successful in receiving LIHTC, as the acronym's typically pronounced, and simply again kind of piggyback on that and award a certain percentage or a component of the $500,000 to those who are successful. Perhaps on a per unit basis. We could still have kind of a sliding scale, still have different criteria related to that, but it would be a little bit more easy to administer, because it would be simply following the process and the restrictions associated with that program that the state administers through WIDA. So those are the two with the new construction, and I'll just highlight the other two with existing housing, and then we'll turn it over to commission then for discussion. Again, with existing housing, and again, thanks to Mr. Jonathan for providing some additional information here. This was also provided in your packet, thankfully ahead of time. So that was actually in here as an attachment. One would be to look at rehabilitation of existing housing, essentially looking at enhancing, expanding, or supplementing, I guess, the CDBG funds that are used to rehabilitate either owner-occupied or rental housing. So that may not create additional housing units, but it would certainly improve quality of existing affordable housing, and perhaps, again, kind of, rising tide, raises all boats kind of theory in that regard. Again, this is a program that already exists, so implementation start time would be relatively short in that regard. Another option with kind of existing housing would be to increase home ownership. That could be used again also to expand the Housing Authority's first-time homebuyer program. Program provides down payment, closing cost assistance for home ownership, and again, barrier a lot of times to home ownership is often found in the funding of the down payment closing costs. So this would help eliminating that barrier and again allow for the home ownership side of the equation to be expanded. So with that, looking for your feedback, input on these options, then of course staff would then draft a more formal policy document for your review at a future meeting, and then you can take that under consideration to then carry that forward to the City Council. So with that, I will turn it back over to the Commission.
Thank you, Scott, for that. And just a point of clarification, is the option to choose one of these, or is there potential for a combination of these?
Great question, Chair Crowell. Thank you. Certainly could be any option, any combination thereof. But again, keeping in mind that it's $500,000, so certainly looking for the most bang for our buck, so to speak. That wouldn't necessarily be the only or most important of the criteria, to maximize that. But the more you utilize these different options, obviously the less funding there is available. And again, as you look at that CIP document, it does talk about over $1 million. I think it's 1.5 in the end, over 5 years. But again, just to know that really it's just the 500,000 that's currently allocated. So, future years are not anything that's necessarily promised for this fund. So we want to make sure that, we're really just looking at the current year's funding. Certainly if it's a program that then could be, have funds reallocated in future years, that's great. But it's not something we necessarily it's not something we necessarily should be counting on, I should say. In future years. So kind of looking at it in kind of a 1 year, I'd say pilot program. We're doing a lot of pilot programs with housing lately, but that's kind of the intent here.
Okay, thank you. All right, so would any commission member like to start off the discussion?
Chair Crow.
Scott Rogers, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairwoman Crowell. Just have a couple questions for Scott, I think. One would be which of these might do the most to increase supply? And then maybe I'll just ask like 2 or 3 questions here if you can maybe address all of them. One of the things I've heard recently from, for instance, W Capital Group, which is developing the current, that they're trying to develop projects where it's mixed income, where you have both the market rate and the affordable housing, and they get a LIHTC grant. So is the competitive award one that potentially could be used by a developer where they have maybe a multifamily project, but they want to create some affordable units as part of that, which has been an interest? Could it be used for that? And then on the LIHTC, it would be those tend to be few and far between. It's hard to get the LIHTC grants. Is there a lot of opportunity to get that one used if we don't get any? How how likely are we to get more light tech projects in Eau Claire?
Great questions. In terms of the first question, kind of what would be the one to best increase the supply? Certainly those under item 1 would allow for, would be appropriated to and applied to new construction. So, that would be the most direct increase in supply. Those for number 2, obviously it'd be more of a kind of a hopeful side benefit. But as you increase home ownership, you then perhaps open up additional rental units that are currently occupied. Same with rehabilitating existing housing can also then, increase property values and allow, homeowners to, move up or move over or something to that effect. So it's more of a kind of a shuffling of units in that regard. So again, the most direct way would be certainly those under item number 1. In terms of, the competitive award, certainly those criteria, I should note, these might be listed from most difficult to least difficult because item 1 would require, a little bit of heavy lifting to try to, kind of flesh out the different criteria that would be required to kind of, rank projects or, provide some sort of kind of a scoring system to offer those funds. So, but again, yeah, certainly the competitive award would be a lot more flexible though in that regard because it's kind of a brand new program that can really be created from the ground up. In terms of, no other light tech projects, let's say there's, even just one that comes online next year, but, is fully financed in other ways, certainly that could be something that could be a concern. There seems to be a large interest in Eau Claire and in these types of projects coming along. So there were, 3 or 4 applications this last year. I anticipate at least another 2 coming into the new year, perhaps 3. Exactly. The risk there is really waiting on a state agency to make a decision before, this commission would be able to, or the city, I should say, would be able to act on, allocating those funds. So, yeah, that's certainly a risk, and there may be some sort of giant asterisk that would have to be considered in terms of if there are no projects, then what kind of thing. There is with CIP, the plus is funds can be rolled over for up to 3 years. So perhaps there is a gap year where funds aren't utilized, but that can be rolled over into subsequent years. So I say it's, kind of keep in mind where it's funding for this year, but that doesn't mean it necessarily has to be only in this year. It can be carried over into subsequent years. So hopefully that answers the questions in at least a basic sense. And like I said, I think honestly it is listed a bit of most complex and most difficult to least difficult in terms of implementation. So keep that in mind as well. Thank you.
May I ask a follow-up question on the light tech one? Is there a way that could be part of the light tech application to help them gain the light tech? If something was deemed worthy of this program, is it possible that when that developer applies for light tech, if this program is part of it, would it be part of their package and help them to gain the light tech funding and to score better, perhaps?
No, that's a great question. That seems to be one of the scoring criteria that WIDA does look at with the light tech projects or applications. That's something that could be, again, further fleshed out in your policy recommendation to City Council. It'd be ultimately their decision to make at that point. But if that's that could certainly be a recommendation or one of the options that you could recommend to them.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or topics of discussion?
Yes, I have a question and then I think a comment too.
Thank you, Judy.
The question is, I just want to confirm that I'm reading this correctly. We talk about CIP dollars, but then the local motel project, I believe, was CDBG funds, correct? So we're potentially talking about we could, under some circumstances, combine CDBG and CIP dollars for affordable housing?
Under this item 2A and 2B, that would be the case. I may defer to Mr. Jonathan in terms of his better memory, in terms of even how much funding is in both of those areas currently, to know kind of what the real capacity would be with those. So the existing, the housing rehabilitation loan program, and then first-time home buyers. Keith, I don't know if you have some general understanding of what those current dollar amounts are.
When you talk about the dollar amounts, are you talking about per applicant, or what we have in total for to be spent from block grant?
I think in my mind, it would clarify if I knew what we had available in the Affordable Housing Fund.
I'm sorry, you broke up.
I'm wondering what the total amount is that we have available in an Affordable Housing Fund. So if we were able to use CDBG dollars in addition to CIP dollars, I know we have $500,000 in CIP, but what could we use of CDBG?
I think I understand your question. Community development block grant monies can be used, but the project has to go to benefit those who are at 80% of median income. They can be part of a larger development as part of the development dollars, but there still has to be that low income designation to qualify for the use of those funds. As far as how much of those CDBG dollars are available, our grant is about $500,000 or maybe $550,000 a year at most. And we do spend that money on many different types of programs. So depending on what the need is, how much is needed, it's really hard to give you a dollar amount. Usually we end up with about $100,000 or so a year that could go towards a project that may happen to come up. For example, one of the programs that that Scott was talking about earlier for the motel, the applicant had applied for $100,000, not towards the purchase of the motel, but a parcel of property adjacent to the motel that they wanted to make a part of that program. And we happened to have $100,000 unallocated. Well, we did some juggling around to make sure that we had $100,000. So, pretty much we have to just juggle the numbers in order to get people what they want in block grant dollars. And in this case, it happened to be $100,000. And in the future, we'll do the same thing. If we get a viable application that requires some funding, we'll look at it and determine how much we've got after we've funded everybody else that we've got to fund as well.
So it sounds to me like we already have a process, an application and allocation process for the CDBG dollars. So what we're trying to decide as a commission is just how we allocate the CIP dollars? Is that true?
Yes, that's correct. So I think to add on to Mr. Jonathan's comments, thanks Keith, that, yeah, these are two existing programs that perhaps may fluctuate in terms of the funding that's available to those individual programs or within CDBG. But yeah, that's certainly something. They are existing, and the $500,000 could, again, as an option or two options here, could be utilized to essentially supplement what's currently in them, which again does fluctuate from year to year. So yeah, again, it's an option for the commission.
And then, so until now, like last year, I believe we had, I think it was $200,000 or $250,000 in the CIP budget that was allocated for single-family housing, and City Council approved the purchase of some land for development of single-family.
Modified to add the features, the accessibility pieces. So much of our old housing stock, it's almost impossible to really necessarily modify them to be accessible for our aging population, for our people with disabilities, and those populations are increasing and they're the hardest to place. And some of the most extremely low-income people, for any number of reasons that were well presented in the consolidated plan that I read. Anyway, just a comment, I would be interested in incentives for selection of people who would construct with a few of these features in mind. Homes, whether they're homes or apartments, they would not look at all unusual to anyone. No one would ever know. But then they could be easily utilized by anyone with inexpensive features added. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair? This is Judy.
Yes, go ahead.
I had a follow-up to what Councilmember Shang was saying, and I think this is a question for Mr. Jonathan. We currently have first-time homebuyer program with down payment assistance and closing cost assistance programs. How much money is allocated to those on an annual basis?
That program, well, let me first say that it's not a down payment closing cost assistance program. What we do is we offer subsidies to the first-time home buyers to help defray the cost of the house or the loan that they need to get. So it's a little bit different than that. Basically, it's a housing authority run program. The housing authority uses money to purchase and renovate. We also use CDBG dollars that they use to purchase and renovate. So depending on the year, depending on how much our entitlement allocation is, we can allocate anywhere from $50 to $100 to $150,000 a year for the house, for that program, to either purchase houses or to use that money towards the rehabilitation of those houses. The housing authority in their program also has money that is used or can be used for purchasing and renovating houses as well. Did I answer your question?
You did, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
This is Natasha Gomez. I have a question. For the first-time home buyers programs that we've seen in the past, are are the home buyers still trying to get like conventional bank loans, or how? I'm just curious about people who have like barriers to renting, such as credit. Are they going to qualify for a program like this, or are they going to have the same issue trying to do this program?
What we do is we offer the house for sale. You don't want to offer a house for sale to somebody who's not going to be able to maintain that house. So we offer it. Usually when they come to us to purchase, they've already been pre-qualified by a bank and have the money that they need to purchase the house, less that subsidy. So we also require that they do some home buyer counseling as well. That's part of the requirement of our program. But as far as do we make sure that they are credit qualified or anything like that, that's not part of what we at the Housing Authority do. We depend on them to get their loan by whatever means. And if they work with a bank that's able to help them by helping them clean up their credit or whatever, then that's what they do. But we just offer the house for sale and we offer a subsidy.
Mr. Jonathan, for these houses, the authority puts it out on the market like normal, so there's no special indication. So I mean, I wouldn't know that this is like an affordable unit.
We do advertise those units, and it's in the paper every week. And we list the addresses of the properties that we have that are either ready for sale or will be upcoming. And that ad does indicate that it's our first-time homebuyer program.
Okay, and then the dollars that are allocated from the CDBG grant, like $50,000 to $100,000, depending on the year, that comes back to the authority to purchase the home and renovate it, or that goes into the rehabilitation existing home housing program? We currently don't have a down payment assistance program. Is that correct for home ownership?
No, we don't offer that through the home program anymore. But Rural Credit Union does receive an allocation for down payment closing cost assistance for those that go through them to get a loan as a low income first time home buyer.
Thank you.
This is just maybe a question for Scott Allen. We do, and this is just a very technical issue, we do have a couple other things left on the agenda. Do we cut it off at 6:30 or do we go until the meeting's done?
We go however long you'd like.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I say that, and I will keep an eye on things, though, if things start to go south on WebEx, but I think we should be okay. Thank you.
Okay. And again, I think maybe it would be helpful if we as a committee can talk about, as a commission can try to narrow it down as to what we're really trying to affect and impact. So I liked what Carrie had talked about is who are we trying to impact with these dollars? And if we can come at least to a conclusion on that, then perhaps at the next meeting, staff can come with a recommendation at least focused on that, and then we can further discuss it. Thoughts on that?
This is Natasha Gomez. I agree with you. That finding out who we want to target is really important. And for me, I guess who I would like to see just personally is people who have barriers for housing. So people who are having a hard time finding some sort of housing, safe, affordable housing right now is personally what would be my priority.
And this is Carrie. I would agree with that.
Karen Betzig-Lundberg, and I would agree with that as well.
And this is Jenny Chappett, and I would also agree with that.
This is Scott Rogers. I'll kind of weigh in. I'm probably on the same plane. I think, part of it is seeing what is the best impact from the funds, and increasing supply across the board is a positive. Councilmember Zhang was, I think, getting at the fact that there might be a way to make the funds last longer if some of them come back, if they're part of loan programs, so that's worth considering. But it seems like the overall goal is to increase supply, particularly for those who have affordability challenges.
This is Councilmember Zhang, and yes, I would agree that getting people into homes is very, very important. I'd just like to know that we have limited resources and figure out how we could potentially extend those resources versus making it a one-time use thing.
Great. So, Mr. Allen, do you feel like you have enough input from us in order to come back at the next meeting with a recommendation?
Perhaps. If I can summarize, so is the general direction to look at expanding the existing housing type programs, or is the interest really going to be at creating new units through other means? I guess not entirely clear. I'm one of those where if you vote 2A, that's great. That would be helpful, but is the general consensus to really focus on, I was looking at, again, focusing on units that are offline or substandard, reducing barriers for affordable housing. So is the intent really on the home ownership side or on the rental side to kind of further narrow this down?
Mr. Allen, I have a question. You might have an answer, or maybe Mr. Jonathan might have. Do we currently have a housing study out there, knowing in Eau Claire, the limits of Eau Claire, how many possible units we have available, vacant and whatnot, that's accessible right now, and how we could work, and then how many Section 8 units we currently have within the limits, like which landlord are accepting that, so we know kind of like demand and supply.
If I could just chime in on that question. As far as the Section 8 units are concerned, the Section 8 voucher goes with the tenant, not with the landlord. So if a person has a voucher, it's incumbent upon them to find a unit where the landlord will accept that voucher. Not all landlords accept vouchers, of course. There are other requirements as well. So when you say Section 8 units, I'm thinking that that's not really the right connotation.
Okay, yes. No, thank you. I'm referring to affordable units that is available potentially for folks if we know that.
I'm not sure that we know that. I can reach out to Bruce King. He works with a lot of the housing in the area, and can probably compile that data. I'll see if I can get that from him. If that's all right, I can get that for you for next month.
Yes, that's fine. I just wasn't sure if we have a housing study, if we've ever had a housing study done in our area.
We haven't had one since I've been at the Housing Authority or the Housing Division. I don't know if we've ever had one done. But we can look into that too to see which organization or which department would be the one that could initiate that.
If I may add to that response, thanks Keith. The City County Health Department, and it looks like Courtney was unable to join us tonight. They have a newer kind of housing survey, and more specifically to rental inspections and such. And they're taking different parts of the city each year, and they've been doing this since 2018, I want to say. And so they're doing a bit of that kind of this substandard survey on our behalf that we can certainly utilize certain areas, perhaps even parcel by parcel that could be identified. So that may be the best guidance or input that we have at this moment in terms of housing, I guess, quality, so to speak. But in terms of overall housing inventory, that's something that we are currently working on. That's, I think, one of the upcoming items here on the agenda is that. And so that's something we're currently working on. That was a recommendation as an output from the Regional Housing Task Force. So that's currently underway as well. But as you can imagine, as Keith noted too, there's information from the Realtors Associations, there's information from different home builders groups, and again, there's a lot out there that we're trying to compile into a little more useful format. But anyway, I'm happy to share some of that as well for your next meeting, and hopefully, in speaking with Courtney, I know it's not necessarily in her division, but perhaps the relevant personnel can assist in presenting some information next time as well, if that helps with the decision making here in particular.
This is Carrie. So I'm looking at the consolidated plan that we just talked about. And I mean, there is some of this information in there. I mean, I realize it's not like accurate as of today, but I mean, there's an entire section on page 68 that talks about the quality of our rental units, and that only 48% of the rental units at the time of this report didn't have conditions, which means that there's a significant disparity for those people that are renting. You're half as likely to be in a unit that has, a substandard or at least one condition of substandard living. And anecdotally, I'm aware of the fact that there are units that exist that can't be rented because they are missing railings or, they're missing some basic elements that landlords need to have in order to be able to go online. And, we live in a market in a world right now where landlords don't have funding to be able to make those kinds of repairs. So, I mean, I do think there are some metrics out there that we could look at and use. And I wanted to qualify my support for looking at options related to getting people housed. I am most interested in looking at building new units or bringing new units online and fixing the ones we have so that people that are low income can rent them. To me, those are the two most important parts. So I just wanted to qualify that recommendation. That's where I was going with that.
This is Judy Mosley. I'd really like.
I'm sorry, Judy. I know that Vice Chair Chaput has been wanting to talk.
Sorry.
So if it's okay, I'm gonna let her go first, and then Judy, you can go after her. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention another measurable standard that we can use, and Mr. Jonathan can attest to this and probably even add clarification. But right now, our housing assistance waiting list, so City of Eau Claire and Eau Claire County waiting list, which doesn't include every low-income person in our community by any means, but at least it gives us a picture that, are we still about a year and a half out, Mr. Jonathan, on those wait lists?
That's correct. And I'd say due to the pandemic, nobody's moving out, so we have very little turnover.
And would you have any idea of about, and I know you probably can't give an exact, but about how many people that means is on that list?
Anywhere between 300 and 350, give or take.
Okay. So I feel like that gives us a pretty good idea of the amount of need that we have in our area for the population that we're looking to focus on, at least what I would like to see us focus on. And because of that, you know, my experience comes in helping to house these folks, work with them to find housing. And in doing that, having to approach our market landlords, you know, like Natasha, or private landlords, and our you know, anything from the bigger companies. And I can tell you that one major, I don't want to say frustration for our landlords, but I feel like it's not necessarily fair that we are almost fully dependent on them to take the brunt of our 300 to 350 people on our wait list. Especially when, you know, a majority of them are not going to meet the screening standards, nor should, you know, the landlords be expected to have to amend their screening standards for those clients as well. So I'm very much in agreement of trying to find a solution to that area as far as adding units. And specifically trying to find a solution in how we can help these folks on our list.
Thank you for that. Judy, you want to go ahead?
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to say that I really agree with what Commissioner Poser just was talking about. I think we can do a combination of new construction and some rehab work. You know, we might have to take some time to decide how that would work, you know, how much would be allocated to each. But I have a hard time in choosing one over the other because the need is so great. And as Commissioner Chaput just pointed out, you know, if we've got 350 people on the city waiting list, think of how many more people we also have on the private landlords waiting lists. You know, if I'll bet you that between Landmark and the different other subsidized housing that's held privately, I'll bet you there's another 350 people on those lists. So, you know, we are talking about a considerable amount of need here. And I think we have to do what we can to both add units to our housing stock and try to keep the housing stock that we've got available.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Allen, does that give you enough to work with, do you think? I suppose we could always just leave it open too as well for commission members to give you feedback as we think of it as well.
Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, certainly feel free to continue to provide some comments and suggestions. I always have to play the public official meeting officer role too, that if you do send something, please just send it only to me, and then I can disseminate it as need be, and not do a reply all or send to the whole commission, so we don't have a quorum issue or public open meeting issue. So certainly opportunities to provide additional input, and then obviously have additional discussion at the next meeting as well. But yeah, we can certainly take this, and it looks like, again, kind of having a combination of making sure that new units are addressed as much as possible, and then also identifying rehabilitation of existing units as an option as well. So again, that's helpful. It'd be great to have a kind of a consensus to bring forward to the city council, but it's certainly within your purview too to provide like staff has done here. Here's option 1, here's option 2, or option 3 as a combination or something like that. I'm sure the city council would like to have one to review, but just as much, I'm sure they'd like to have some other feedback on the other options, at least to understand too, what are the pros and cons of those as they make their final decision. So all to say, yes, that's helpful, and I appreciate the input so far.
Great. Thank you so much. And do we want to go into the 2021 draft work plan or table that for now and move that to next month's agenda?
I'll leave that up to the commission. I do want to acknowledge and appreciate Commissioner Mosley for putting together the framework for your consideration here too. Again, this is a great format, and it's one that's frequently utilized with other boards and commissions. In terms of timing, this too, again, is like a December or January time frame. Most boards and commissions do look at typically January for adopting their work plan. In working with, for example, the Plan Commission, they even have a couple meetings where they discuss it. So they have the benefit of having 2 meetings a month. So they usually take both meetings in January to have that discussion. And there's nothing to say it can't be done in February either. So want to make sure that we're aware of where things are headed for the next year, but don't want to necessarily rush into a long list of things if you're unprepared. So there we go.
All right, just to respect everybody's time and to make sure that we're giving proper discussion to this agenda item, I think we'll put this on next month's agenda item. Also give us more time to look at the work plan and think about it for discussion next month. Great, thank you. That was really good discussion. Thank you for all of your input. Moving on to agenda item 6, other business agenda items, and we'll throw that back to Mr. Allen to talk about the staff update.
All right, thank you, Chair Kroll. Again, a number of these items here were items that were brought up by other commission members in advance of today, and certainly, again, happy to take other feedback and input along the way. I know some of these, and again, I don't want to be your stereotypical government official that says, these are all great and they're in the works. But these are all great and these are in the works. So with that being the case, again, the regional housing inventory, as I mentioned, I actually do have a staff intern currently who's working on that. And as noted, I think we can give a better update at your next meeting with some additional data points and such, so we can at least give you some of that framework as to the types of data that we are researching and providing. And with that, again, happy to get some feedback on, well, what other things do we need to make sure are being addressed in that? That can certainly be a separate agenda item for discussion next time. The transit development plan, that too is in the works. I know, again, the transit situation is vital to certainly all housing types, but affordable housing in particular. That too is in the works. The Community Services Department is working on that in conjunction with the Transit Commission. So I've been told that they are looking to have that completed next month as well. So as far as we can get some drafts or other information on that, I can provide that even separately in advance of the meeting next month. And then finally, the 2015 Comprehensive Plan 5-year review, as you know, talking about Chapter 10, and gave you a little bit of context and background on that and your involvement there. That too, there are monthly work sessions that the Plan Commission is hosting. They're having their next work session next Monday, the 16th. And the hope and plan is to coordinate that with their annual work plan in January. So the idea is to have perhaps 2 to 3 more work sessions, some additional public input opportunities as well, as much as we can. and then have something early next year to present as a final updated review version moving forward. So yeah, watch for some public input opportunities there, but obviously Chapter 10, as you have comments and questions and input, please be sure to share those, and we'll pass those along to the Plan Commission. The chair of the Plan Commission did want to note as well that their public input, their agenda item for each meeting, they're happy to receive feedback on the comprehensive plan review as well. So you're welcome to attend or view those meetings online, I should say. In-person attendance is still not possible at this point, but that item number 4 on their agenda as well, they're hoping that could serve as kind of a de facto input opportunity on the comprehensive plan. So if there's something other than Chapter 10 that you are interested in, or others in your circles are interested in commenting on, that would be an opportunity as well. And again, Plan Commission will be presenting and providing some additional public input opportunities later on. So I think that hit all the staff updates for now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Moving on to item number 7, discussion and direction A, future agenda items. We will, of course, have the 2021 draft work plan on next agenda items. Anything else that anybody else would like to see on the agenda for next month? Hearing none, and of course you have time between now and then to get those over to Mr. Allen if something does come up. Any other announcements anybody has? All right, hearing none, we can move on to agenda item number 8, which is our adjournment, and I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right. Jenny Tappett has made a motion. I'll take a second.
Yeah, I'll second.
All right. Good. That was that. Austin for the second?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Good. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you so much for your participation tonight. It was great to see you all. Stay safe, and we will see you next month.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk,